میخوام بگم امروز ما در یک جنگ ناجوانمردانه‌ای که در رأسش آمریکا و رژیم صهیونیستی هستند، ملت ما شجاعانه.
Well, they want to make a deal, but they're not going to make the kind of a deal that I feel is necessary. Look, we're in there for one reason. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. You understand that? Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and they won't have a nuclear weapon. And right now, them building one after what we did previously with the B-2 bombers, going to be a long time behalf. But
those who fight in the special military operation are at the forefront of this battle. And together, we will achieve our goals and we will do everything possible so that the victory is ours.
At 3 o'clock on a Tuesday morning, inside the underground command center at Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the secure red landline on the central battle desk began to ring. That phone does not ring for routine intelligence updates. It does not ring for satellite retasking orders or scheduled briefing summaries. When that specific line lights up in the dark, it means someone, somewhere in the Persian Gulf, has just made a catastrophic decision that could drag 300 million people into a shooting war before sunrise. On the other end of that line, naval intelligence officers were scrambling to verify a video feed coming out of Tehran that felt so reckless, so genuinely unhinged, that senior planners at Central Command had to replay the tape 3 times just to believe what they were seeing. Iran's military leadership had just gone on national television and turned modern military warfare into an open market hit contract. They announced an active cash bounty of 5 billion tomans, roughly $30,000 in cold hard cash, for the capture or kill of any American soldier, sailor, airman, or Marine operating in the Middle East. 30 grand ahead. Think about what that actually means for a second. That is not how a serious, confident regional power acts. That is the ragged, chaotic gasp of a regime that has run completely out of conventional military options, openly begging proxy militias and freelance mercenaries to hunt down American service members in broad daylight. And before the Pentagon could even draft an initial statement, Tehran doubled down by unveiling a massive propaganda billboard towering over the public squares of the capital, broadcasting a fake giant visual of burning American guided missile destroyers sinking into the dark waters of the Strait of Hormuz. They painted a direct threat across maritime channels, telling the world that any U.S. warship entering the Gulf was sailing straight into a watery grave. When that intelligence packet landed on the desk of Admiral Brad Cooper and the Commander-in-Chief, the reaction was not an angry press conference. It was not a strongly worded diplomatic letter through Swiss intermediaries. The order came down fast, cold, and absolute. Over the next 90 minutes, the United States military unleashed the most technologically lopsided, surgically terrifying counterstrike in modern naval history. Carrier-launched stealth fighters, electronic warfare decoys, and a wall of sea-skimming cruise missiles systematically wiped out the entire coastal defense network that Iran had spent 30 years and billions of dollars constructing across the Persian Gulf. It was a textbook, 100% tactical slaughter. American forces did not lose a single jet, and not a single American sailor was touched. Yet right now, while people in Washington are still celebrating a flawless military victory, the real fallout is quietly triggering pure panic across global trading desks. Because while the Pentagon wiped out every single physical weapon Iran possessed on those islands, they ran headfirst into an economic trap that no weapon in the American arsenal can destroy. Stay with me, because the numbers coming out of the strait right now tell a horrifying story that nobody is talking about on the news. Let's be completely honest about what that $30,000 bounty really represented. When Iranian Army Chief Amir Hatami stepped in front of the cameras to announce that cash reward, he wasn't demonstrating military strength. He was exposing pure, raw panic. For decades, the Islamic Republic projected power across the Middle East through what military analysts call the axis of resistance. They had their proxy networks in Lebanon, their drone launch sites in Yemen, their fortified militia bases in Iraq, and their deep subterranean ballistic missile silos buried under the Zagros Mountains. But over the last 18 months, that entire deterrence network has been systematically shredded from the outside in. Their senior commanders were eliminated in targeted strikes. Their weapons depots were hammered week after week, and their economy was buckling under the weight of currency collapse and internal unrest. When a government starts offering cash bounties on individual soldiers, it means their formal military machine knows it cannot stand toe-to-toe with a carrier strike group in an open fight. It is the ultimate admission of weakness. Imagine being a 19-year-old Marine standing guard on a patrol base in the Syrian desert, or a young Navy technician standing watch in the radar room of a destroyer in the Gulf of Oman, and you find out that a hostile foreign government has put a price tag on your life on global television. It is outrageous. It is grotesque. And then came that billboard in Tehran. It showed American warships engulfed in roaring orange flames, cracked in half, disappearing beneath black water, with bold lettering declaring that the Persian Gulf belonged to the Islamic Republic. They wanted an escalation. They wanted to show their domestic base that they could still push the world around. They thought the United States would respond with a few targeted drone strikes on isolated radar shacks or launch a round of sanctions through the Treasury Department. They completely misjudged who they were dealing with. Admiral Cooper and the strike planners at CENTCOM did not plan a tit-for-tat retaliation. They planned total, systematic architectural destruction. To understand why this strike was so catastrophic for Iran, you have to understand the geography of the most dangerous waterway on planet Earth. Every day on the news, reporters talk about the Strait of Hormuz, like it is this wide-open, 21-mile stretch of deep ocean where ships can just sail around whenever they feel like it. That is a total myth. The Persian Gulf is remarkably shallow, full of treacherous underwater ridges, shoals, and jagged limestone formations. Massive crude oil supertankers, ships that stretch over 1,000 feet long, weigh 300,000 tons, and carry 2 million barrels of crude oil while drawing more than 65 feet of water below the surface, cannot just steer wherever their captains want. They are forced by the laws of physics and bathymetry into a microscopic navigation channel called the Traffic Separation Scheme. This channel is literally 2 miles wide for inbound ships, 2 miles wide for outbound ships, and separated by a 2-mile buffer zone. That is it, a 4-mile ribbon of deep water that carries roughly 20% of the world's entire petroleum supply every single day. And right along the edge of that razor-thin shipping lane sit 3 small, jagged islands: Greater Tunb, Lesser Tunb, and Abu Musa. Back in 1971, Iran seized these islands, and over the course of 3 decades, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps turned them into fortified military nightmares. They tunneled deep into the limestone rock, carving out hardened underground hangars for suicide drones, reinforced launch bays for Noor and Gator anti-ship cruise missiles, and underground blast pens housing fast-attack speedboats loaded with torpedoes and naval mines. They installed high-powered surface search radars on the highest peaks to track every single commercial tanker and naval vessel from the moment it entered the Gulf. Iranian state media openly bragged that Abu Musa and the Tumbs were their unsinkable aircraft carriers. Their whole military doctrine was built around a single terrifying premise. If the United States ever attacked Iran, the Erguks would unleash thousands of missiles and speedboat swarms directly from these 3 islands at point-blank range, turning the 2-mile shipping channel into a shooting gallery and instantly shutting down the global economy. They believed those rocks made them completely untouchable. And that is where Iranian military planners made the most fatal intellectual mistake in the history of naval warfare. Because in modern high-end warfare, an island is not a fortress. An island is a death trap. Think about the difference between a real aircraft carrier and an island. A real aircraft carrier moves at 35 knots. It maneuvers, it changes direction, it hides behind weather fronts, and finding it in millions of square miles of open ocean is an absolute nightmare. But an island does not move an inch. You cannot steer a mountain away from an incoming missile. For 30 years, American spy satellites, high-altitude surveillance drones, and naval reconnaissance platforms had been mapping every single square inch of Abu Musa and the Tunbs. The Pentagon did not just know where the bases were. They had the exact, millimeter-precise GPS coordinates of every concrete ventilation shaft, every subterranean blast door, every backup generator, and every hidden missile rail. To the Iranian regime, those islands represented permanence and strength. To the United States military, that permanence was simply a finished, targeting solution waiting for a launch code. The counterattack began in total darkness. High above the black waters of the Persian Gulf, flying at 40,000 feet with their radar-absorbent skin drinking in the night sky, a strike package of carrier-based F-35C Lightning II stealth fighters glided into position. The pilots inside those cockpits were not flying in with guns blazing. In modern fifth-generation warfare, the most lethal weapon is not always a bomb. It is information. Instead of opening their internal weapons bays to drop heavy munitions, the F-35s released a swarm of ADM-160 miniature air-launched decoys. These decoys are pure engineering genius. They are small, jet-powered flying craft with specialized electronic payloads that actively mimic the radar cross-section and flight profile of full-sized American strike fighters and heavy bombers. As the decoys fanned out across the northern Gulf, flying in realistic attack formations straight toward Abu Musa and Greater Tunb, they looked like an entire armada of American warplanes on Iranian radar scopes. Inside the underground command bunkers on the islands, Iranian air defense crews went into pure, unadulterated panic. Believing they were under immediate saturation attack by dozens of incoming American bombers, the Iranian commanders ordered their long-range surveillance radars and surface-to-air tracking systems into full active power. They lit up their radar arrays, blasting massive beams of high-frequency electromagnetic energy into the night sky to lock onto the incoming targets. And in that exact fraction of a second, the trap snapped shut. The orbiting F-35Cs were not actively transmitting. They were operating in passive stealth mode, quietly listening to the electromagnetic spectrum. The moment the Iranian radar arrays began emitting, the advanced electronic warfare suites on the F-35s grabbed those signals out of the air, calculated the exact geographic coordinates of every single transmitter down to the centimeter, and instantly flashed that data through secure Link 16 networks back to American warships steaming hundreds of miles away in the Gulf of Oman. The Iranian operators thought they were locking onto targets. In reality, they had just illuminated their own positions for every cruise missile in the theater. What happened next was an absolute wall of fire. Down at sea level in the Gulf of Oman, the vertical launch cells aboard American guided missile destroyers and cruisers blew open in rapid succession. Scores of Tomahawk Block V cruise missiles roared out of their canisters, turning the night sky into daylight before dropping down to just 50 feet above the dark ocean water. These Tomahawks did not fly in a straight, predictable line. They navigated along pre-programmed low-altitude waypoints, using terrain contour matching and digital scene mapping to skim just above the ocean swells, staying completely below the radar horizon of the Iranian defenses. At the same time, AGM-158C long-range anti-ship missiles dropped out of high altitude, utilizing autonomous onboard optical and infrared sensors to scan the coastlines, cross-referencing live imagery with target databases to identify hardened missile launch rails and underground boat pens. The Iranian crews on Abu Musa were still frantically launching surface-to-air interceptors at the fake signals of the Mal decoys when the first wave of Tomahawks arrived. The impact was instantaneous and catastrophic. The Tomahawks did not hit empty ground. They slammed directly into the primary radar domes, communication relay towers, and backup diesel generators. In less than 3 minutes, all 3 islands went totally blind and totally deaf. Every external power line was severed, and their communication links back to the Central Military Command in Tehran were permanently cut. Then came the heavy bunker penetrators. The second wave of precision weapons carried dense, hardened tungsten-cased warheads, engineered specifically to punch through yards of reinforced concrete and solid limestone before detonating. On Greater Tunb, the hydraulic blast doors of the subterranean missile bays were blown clean off their hinges, collapsing the underground launch rails before a single Iranian cruise missile could even be rolled out into firing position. On Abu Musa, bunker-busting warheads punched through the roofs of the underground fast-attack speedboat pens, igniting fuel storage tanks and torpedo magazines in a chain reaction of massive secondary explosions that cracked the limestone cliffs open like eggshells. Flames and smoke shot hundreds of feet into the air, lighting up the entire horizon across the southern Persian Gulf. 87 minutes after the first decoy was dropped, the American strike package cleared the airspace. Decades of Iranian fortification, hundreds of millions of dollars in coastal missile systems, and the entire backbone of their maritime defense strategy had been turned into smoldering, pulverized gravel. Not a single American aircraft was damaged. Not a single American service member was lost. It was a masterclass in military precision, overwhelming electronic dominance, and absolute operational speed. Back in Washington, and at CENTCOM headquarters, the mission was hailed as an unprecedented success. The message had been delivered with absolute clarity. If you put a $30,000 bounty on American troops and threaten our fleet, your military infrastructure will simply cease to exist. Official press releases declared that the Strait of Hormuz was secure, defended by the full might of the United States Navy, and wide open for commercial trade. On paper, the battle was completely over. The enemy's weapons were destroyed. The sea lanes were physically clear of threats. So, international shipping resumed immediately, right? The tankers lined up and started moving oil like they always do, right? No. This is where the story takes a devastating turn that should send a chill down the spine of every person listening to this. Under normal, everyday conditions, between 120 to 140 massive commercial vessels transit the Strait of Hormuz every single day. That is millions of barrels of crude oil, tons of liquefied natural gas, and thousands of shipping containers moving constantly to keep global factories running, grocery store shelves stocked, and power grids operating. The US Navy told the world the channel was safe. Yet when you look at the actual maritime AIS tracking telemetry in the days following that 90-minute strike, commercial traffic through the strait did not increase. It did not return to normal. It completely collapsed. Daily traffic plummeted from over 120 ships a day down to a grand total of just 39 ships for the entire week. That is an 85% drop in commercial maritime movement through the most critical economic artery on Earth. The most heavily traveled energy corridor in human history turned into an eerie, empty expanse of water. How could a total, flawless military victory that wiped out the entire enemy threat result in the near-total shutdown of the waterway? Because the generals and the politicians forgot the most basic rule of global commerce. You cannot bomb an insurance premium. While American commanders were looking at high-resolution satellite photos showing flattened bunkers and shattered boat pens, the people who actually decide whether the global economy functions were sitting in a quiet, historic room in London. The Joint War Committee of Lloyd's of London, the maritime insurance syndicate that underwrites the policies for nearly every commercial cargo ship and oil tanker sailing the oceans today, held an emergency closed-door meeting. Those insurance actuaries and risk analysts did not care that the US Navy had executed a brilliant military strike. They did not care that the Tomahawk missiles hit their targets with centimeter-level precision. What those underwriters saw was that the Persian Gulf had just exploded into a hot, kinetic combat zone where supersonic cruise missiles were flying through the air and massive secondary explosions were rocking coastal islands. Within hours of the American strikes, the Joint War Committee expanded the designated high-risk war zone boundaries across the entire Gulf. Marine underwriters immediately hiked the additional war risk insurance premiums for any commercial vessel daring to enter the Strait of Hormuz by more than 1,200%. Let me explain what that means in cold, hard cash. Before the strikes, insuring a single supertanker carrying 2 million barrels of oil through the strait cost a shipping company around $30,000 to $40,000 for the transit. After the strikes, that exact same insurance policy instantly skyrocketed to over $500,000 for a single one-way trip, if a shipping company could even find an underwriter willing to take the risk in the first place. When you combine that insane insurance cost with the fact that ship owners were risking the total loss of a $200 million vessel and the lives of their crews, the decision was immediate. Major shipping consortiums in Greece, Japan, and Singapore, along with global oil conglomerates, slammed the brakes on their entire operations. Tanker captains were ordered to drop anchor outside the Gulf of Oman, while hundreds of other vessels were redirected to begin the grueling 12,000-mile detour all the way around the southern tip of Africa via the Cape of Good Hope, adding weeks of transit time and burning millions of extra dollars in bunker fuel. Iran's military fortresses are gone. Their missile launchers are scrap metal. Their radar domes are ashes. But Iran did not need their island bases to survive the strike to cause global disruption. By offering that unhinged cash bounty, putting up those aggressive billboards, and provoking an overwhelming American military intervention, Tehran dragged the region into the exact state of kinetic chaos that the global financial and insurance systems cannot tolerate. The United States military proved once again that no force on this planet can stand in front of American precision firepower. Admiral Cooper and Central Command delivered a flawless, devastating tactical lesson. But tactical perfection on the battlefield does not equal strategic victory in the global economy. The missiles did their job. The bases are silent. But as 39 lonely ships navigate a deserted channel and oil prices start climbing worldwide, we are left with a brutal, undeniable truth about modern conflict. You can win the war in 90 minutes, but you cannot force the markets to sail through the smoke.